It's home for us as members of the North Carolina Drag Racing Hall of Fame. We renamed it the Jim and Dora Memorial Award. And I thought, I know a group or a family or a husband and wife that's well deserving of this. Back in the days when my dad, Norman, and us, we run farming and dragway, we had great folks around us. You can't call them competition, but we was all the drag strip business. They run Elk Creek, they run East Bend, but they've done it as a family. And that's what this is about, and Jim and Dora done the same thing. I'm proud to bring their son up here, Darren, come up, because I know he's got a long speech, so he's going to keep it 7 minutes. But we want to talk about his mom and dad, Tommy and Nell Morton, folks. Thank you.
Hey, this is obviously not about me, but I'll mention this. I'm 59 years old, and I want all you Hall of Famers to understand that I was not born when my parents started their careers. So I grew up with you guys in your prime, and I'm in awe of all of you. Before I start, I want to mention this. Last night, my dad had a spell, and he ended up in the hospital. So he's not here today, nor my mother. And I told him, I said, Dad, that's a pretty shitty reaction time. And then I told him, this is not about burnouts. Today was about burnouts, not burning through your deductible. It's devastating to them. And I can assure you that this honor is a treasure to them, true treasure. And we're going to video this so they can see it. They'll be thrilled. And while I'm here, I want to mention that our friend Larry Waller is battling a health issue. And, you know, driving up here, you think about in drag racing, we do our very best to try to go just a little quicker, just a little faster. And then when we flip it over and we talk about life, we want to slow it down just a little bit. So what I would like for you to do, if you're the praying type, if you're the thought type, or the type that you are, I just ask that you keep my family and Larry Waller's family in your encouragement. That's what I'd like to ask. I am standing here honored to talk about our parents, Tommy and Nell Morton. I have 7 minutes, and I perfected the most I can say in that time. I'm going to tell you to get your ears in high gear, because we're going to set a national record. Buckle up. First, I want to thank all of those of the North Carolina Drag Racing Hall of Fame who are responsible for this true honor for my parents. And I will, even with only 7 minutes, I'm going to pause and say that again. This is a true honor, and my family recognizes it. And I want to say a special thank you to Mark Joyce. Mark walked us through this entire process. Thank you, Mark. You've been a friend, but more so, you are a fantastic ambassador for drag racing. Thank you. You deserve applause. Yes, our parents had many big names: Ronnie Sox, Soxy Martin, Lee Edwards, Don Carlton, Ricky Smith and the Country Shindig Maverick, Wildman Harold Denton, Warren Johnson, Jerome Bradford, Grumpy Jenkins, Shoe Baby Platt, Alfred Williams, Sam Carroll, Jack McClamrock, Don Clemens, Butch Kernodle, Roberta Schultz, and Bunny Burkett. Jet car guys like Art Arfons, the Green Monster, Dave Corey, Fred Sibley, even Big Willie Robinson and Tamiko from Los Angeles, California. In the King Daytona and Queen Daytona cars, it was Street Racers Brotherhood, they called it, and their slogan was "Cars Can Unite People." And that was fantastic for East Bend Dragway in the 1960s and all through the 70s. And Zach Reynolds would often fly his airplane right over the track at East Bend, sometimes upside down and sometimes just a few feet off the ground. But importantly, and maybe even more importantly, we had those that showed up every single weekend. Arnold Thomas and his sons, Ronald and Donald. That dang Donald never wore a pair of shoes in his life. Y'all seen that boy. Wayne and Brenda Dollyhigh, Bill Hall and his wife in their Corvette, the Hulls, the Holders, the Mitchells off of Mount Airy, Roger Wilson, Billy Lewis, Joe Cullen, Shade Tree Mechanic, Carolina Stinger, Virginia Hillbilly, Linwood and Gene Dowry. We had a guy who showed up at East Bend every weekend. He raced a beige Pontiac convertible. He drove it there, drove it home, and he had no legs. And he raced that car every weekend. And I mean every weekend. And that's a name I wish I knew today to say out loud. He and many others like him belong in the East Bend Hall of Fame. The Morton Family Hall of Fame, to be honest, they belong in the Weekend Warrior Hall of Fame. What I'm saying or sharing or reminding is you do not get to the Hall of Fame, the Driver Hall of Fame, the Pioneers Hall of Fame, by yourself. It takes many, many people around you who believe in you and support you. Workers who show up every Saturday night and Sunday afternoon. Racers, not only the greatest of the great racers, but the every weekend racer who spends their time during the week repairing their car and then spending their money on the weekend to race it. And of course the fans, the spectators who show up every time the gates open. I wish I could call out every name of a spectator who visited my parents' track. But I want to share this, and I shared the same thing at the 50th anniversary of Elk Creek Dragway, which my parents built in 1967. My parents, I don't care what anyone says, or if anyone wants to debate it, bottom line, our parents loved the worker. They loved the spectator. But they understood. They understood that without the drag racer, none of this was possible. They understood, and they raised us kids to understand. And they made certain that everyone that worked at their track for over 30 years, it was about the drag racer. Without the racer, you didn't have track owners. You didn't have workers. You didn't have spectators. Nada. We wouldn't be here today without the drag racer. One particular racer, Ken Regathal, called my mom some years ago. It was when he was elected into this hall. And he called to thank her for guiding him through his first visit to a drag strip ever. And guiding him through his first summer of racing at East Bend Dragway. That is a Hall of Fame person. Not a drag racer. That's a Hall of Fame person. And there were so many Hall of Fame people in drag racing. Jerry Williams, Mike Boyles, Jimmy Dale Parsons, Tony Parsons, Bud Crow, Mike Dabb, Ray White, T.G. Matthews, Max Hurley, Sam Holder, C.W. Parker, Bo Moxley. And man, I always loved Grady Mitchell. And of course, those people like Ken Regathal. So many names I've mentioned, both the big names and the Hall of Fame names. Those people started their career at East Bend Dragway in the very early 1960s. And of course, the one who created the most antics at our drag strip, had his name called up here more than anybody today, Roy Hill. 2 years ago, I was standing right out here. I went up to his little stand and I reminded him who I was. And I said, Roy, you still have that two-headed coin you used at Elk Creek that night for lane choice? He said, I might. Dad first met Roy Hill at Sam Kennedy's garage. Roy was standing on a pop crate so he could reach over to work on the car. So many great stories over the year. Once we had a match race with Roberta Schultz and Bunny Burkett. My mom had me hand deliver the appearance checks. I was about 13 years old. So I went over to Bunny's trailer, handed her check, told her thank you. Went over to Roberta Schultz's trailer, went into the side door, and when I opened that door, she was standing there. She didn't have anything between her and the sky except the look on my face. And she told my mom later, she said, I may have scarred your son for life, and she did. And it was a positive scar. But she also told my mom, she says, as surprised as he was, I was more surprised because I was expecting Roy Hill to walk in that side. I was going to say Larry Waller, and he's not here today. I was going to say C.W. Parker, and he's not here today. When I walked in to see C.W. Parker, Roy Hill, and he asked my sister if she was married, I said, I'm going Roy Hill. We We had people show up every weekend to help our parents. Dick Miles, Bo Moxley, Brian Billings, he's right here today. The three Sutherland brothers and their dad Fred Sutherland, Ricky Zachary, Gene Pollard, Rob and Eva Jones, Mark Jones, Kathy Bryant, Cecile Hale. I could go on for a long time. And I've always said if reality TV was around in the 70s, we would have been the first Duck Dynasty. Like them, we had all the crazy events. I mean, my parents were marketers. They were promoters. We had jet cars, funny cars, Southern style match races, dirt digs, streaking contests, wet t-shirt contests. We even had Easter egg hunts on Easter Sunday at East Bend. The first jet car at East Bend, remember the fence behind it was metal, like tin, like you would put on your roof. That jet car come up there, it hit the afterburner, it blew every piece of metal off that fence out into Highway 67. It was flying up in the air. Not a single car was damaged, not a person was harmed, but those fans went bananas. And when you had a jet car at East Bend Dragway for the rest of their career, it was packed. And like Duck Dynasty, we had all the names. Names like Grit Bryant, Big Dauber, Little Dauber, Head, Porky, Wheatley, Silver Dollar. Larry Waller was one of my parents' first hires. East Bend was where it all began for him at the age of 16. And of course, they drug all of us kids to the track every Saturday night, every Sunday afternoon. Our parents, owning a drag strip, put special meaning in how we have all lived our lives. And you know what? None of this would have happened without George Butner. George Butner, he and Cleo, to be honest, they changed my parents' life path. They just changed their path. And George and Cleo helped each one of our kids when we needed something. They helped us with whether it was our first car, our first home, or starting a business, or maybe even all three. My best George Butner impression, if anybody of you guys knew George Butner. Otherwise, I'm going to hand you cash, and I want you to hand me cash back. He said the IRS come up here and asked me for my Social Security number, and I told him, I don't have yours, so I don't know any reason you need to have mine. Quick story. My dad's a lifelong fan of drag racing, and I have solid proof. It's his grandkids' favorite story. It was Thanksgiving. All the family was around at my parents' house. And Dad was so excited because there was a new drag racing show on TV. He was super irritated, though, because he put it on the DVR, and every time he would try to watch it, the prior show would run over, he would say. And he said that prior show has a man dressing up as a woman. And the girls said, Paul, that's RuPaul's Drag Race. Well, we don't know. RuPaul is about a man who drags. He was simply trying to continue being a fan of drag racing. Bottom line, I named a lot of names today, and I've only said my parents' name one time. And that's because I feel like my parents understand. That it is because of all the names that I called out. That's a big part of why they're being honored here today. The racer, the fan, the worker. But I want to remind my parents that they are indeed being honored. And why? It's because they treated all those names and all those people with respect for years and years. It's because they never adjusted an advertised purse. They paid every advertised purse, regardless of the situation. They paid every appearance fee. They honored their word for years and years. And they were true promoters. They were true marketers. They created a lot of new ideas, and they made a lot of old ideas better. And it's a combination of all those things that my parents, Tommy and Nell Morton, are being honored here today as a couple. And I'll repeat that, as a couple. A combination of all those names and all those things is why they are being so honored here today. So we say thank you to the North Carolina Drag Racers Hall of Fame for so deservedly honoring Tommy and Nell Morton. And I'll say one last thing. I've got 3 daughters and a niece who look better than any Miss Winston you've ever seen. And they're going to be carrying around a little poster board and some Sharpies. If anybody of you guys want to put a little note or just sign it to my parents, I'm going to deliver it to my dad today. You guys stand up just real quick.
Over here.
North Carolina Drag Racers Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Darren, you might need these, bro. Great 7.5-minute speech there, brother. Anyway, we got special remarks coming up from Buddy Martin.
How about a hand for Buddy Martin?